All right, today we're talking about a group of people you think you know, the Puritans. But I'm going to bet that a lot of what you've heard is just, well, wrong. We're talking about the folks who founded places like Harvard and really shaped American culture, but whose story has been completely twisted over time.
Yeah, you've probably heard that one before, right? It paints this picture of these super stern, joyless people. There's another saying that they were, quote, baptized in vinegar and weaned on a pickle. And look, that's the image that's really stuck with us for hundreds of years.
But here's the thing about caricatures. They're catchy, but they're usually not the whole truth. And with the Puritans, when you actually dig into the real historical sources, what you find is way more interesting and honestly way more human. Okay, so first things first. Before we can even get into who the Puritans were, we've got to clear away all the verbal mud that's been thrown at them over the years. Let's just dive right in and bust some of the biggest myths. So when I say Puritan, what pops into your head? It's probably this, right? Super serious faces, everyone dressed in drab black clothing, looking like they're judging your every move. And yeah, their portraits definitely give off that vibe. But you gotta remember, sitting for a portrait back then was a very formal, serious deal. But get this, the reality? It was so much more colorful. Literally. They were all sorts of colors, and some of them were, kind of flashy. Take one of their greatest thinkers, a guy named John Owen. He'd stroll through Oxford with powdered hair, a velvet jacket, and these fancy Spanish leather boots. I mean, come on. They also enjoyed good food, good drink. They were not against enjoying life. So if they weren't these miserable killjoys, then who were they? To really get it, we have to look past the velvet jackets and the stereotypes and get to the heart of what was driving them. And it was this deep, powerful desire to reform the Reformation. And the famous poet John Milton, he nailed it with this phrase, "This is so key to understanding them." They didn't think they were inventing something totally new. They saw themselves as carrying the torch, continuing the work of church reform that had already started.
And that brings us to their name. Puritan was actually an insult that people threw at them. The idea was that they thought they were purer than everyone else. But that's not how they saw it at all. They never thought they had arrived at some perfect state of purity. For them, it was all about the process, a constant, lifelong journey of purifying themselves and the church.
Okay, so what was the fuel for this fire? What was the engine driving this whole movement? It really all boils down to one thing, one single unifying passion. And that passion was an absolutely all-consuming love for the Bible. Seriously, if you take away only one thing from this, let it be this. You cannot understand the Puritans without understanding how much they loved the Bible. It was the foundation for everything, their faith, their jobs, their families, their entire lives. And this wasn't just some vague, abstract idea. Oh no, they lived this out in some pretty incredible ways. I'm talking about people who would travel for hours just to hear a good sermon. They'd listen to sermons that were an hour, maybe even 2 hours long. Can you imagine? And there's this one amazing story where a preacher, Lawrence Chatterson, he apologizes for preaching for 2 hours straight, and the crowd, the whole congregation, yells back, "For God's sake, sir, go on, go on." This deep devotion led to some just unbelievably powerful moments. And I want to tell you one story in particular that, for me, just perfectly captures the emotional core of who these people were. So picture this. We're in a small village in England, and the local preacher is a guy they called Roaring John Rogers. And he's got this feeling that his church, his congregation, they're starting to take the Bible for granted. Just letting it sit on the shelf, collecting dust. So right in the middle of his sermon, he pulls this incredibly dramatic move. He starts speaking as if he is God. And he says to the people, "Well, I have trusted you for so long with my Bible. You've slighted it. You don't even care to look at it. Is that how you treat my Bible? Fine, you shall have my Bible no longer." And then, just to make this threat feel completely real, he physically picks up the huge pulpit Bible from its cushion, and he starts to walk away with it, like he's actually taking it away from them forever. And the reaction is just instant. And this is where Rogers is just brilliant. He switches roles, he falls to his knees, and now he's speaking for the people, pleading back to God, and he cries out, "Lord, whatsoever thou dost to us, take not thy Bible from us. Kill our children, burn our houses, destroy our goods. Only spare us thy Bible, only take not away thy Bible." And wow, that just shows you everything, doesn't it? The historical account says the whole church was just deluged with their own tears. The guy who wrote this down, who was actually there, he was so emotional that when he left the church, he had to just hang onto his horse's neck and weep for a quarter of an hour before he could even get the strength to ride home. That's how much the Bible meant to them.
But you see, this deep love, it wasn't just a big emotional outburst. It was also really practical and methodical. They had structured ways to dive into the text. A thinker named Richard Greenham, for instance, he laid out this whole daily practice. It wasn't just about reading, it was about diligent study, meditation, and even conference, which meant talking about it with other people, really working to weave it into the fabric of your life. And really, this quote from a Puritan named John Flavel kind of sums it all up. For them, the Bible wasn't some stuffy rule book designed to make everyone miserable. Far from it. It was their most precious guide for how to live a good life, how to suffer with dignity, and even how to face death with real comfort.
So that kind of leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? So often we define groups in history by what they opposed, what they were against. But looking at the Puritans, you have to wonder, what if the real secret to understanding a group of people, any group of people, isn't what they hated, but what they absolutely passionately loved?